Good evening, everyone. My name is David Lipovsky. I'm chair of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act Alliance. We're one of a dozen disability organizations and agencies, all nonpartisan, all which have come together to bring you this event this evening. Welcome to the 2025 Ontario Election Disability Debate. We are here in beautiful Holland, Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital in the middle of Midtown, snowy Toronto, to bring you an important issue in this election. Now, in every election, politicians tell you that this is the most important election. But guess what? For 2.9 million Ontarians who have a physical disability, a sensory or mental or communication disability, a neurological disability, an intellectual disability, mental health or psychosocial disability, any kind of disability, for them and for all of their friends and families and loved ones, for them and all the people who will get a disability later in life, that really means all Ontarians. For them, this in some ways is the most important election. 20 years ago, the Ontario legislature rose to applaud unanimously when it passed the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, when unanimously all Ontario parties united as never before and probably never since to promise all Ontarians with a present or future disability that by the beginning of 2025, Ontario would be an accessible province. It isn't. And here we are just a month later with an election campaign called. And this is a time for people with disabilities to ask tough questions of all parties, not only about accessibility, but about social income support, about housing, about delays and backlogs in vital services, about underfunding during claims of record-breaking funding, and so on. We have to honor those who stand for election, those who have the courage to place themselves before voters and say, choose me and choose my party. We have to honor those who are prepared to do this because they're putting themselves in front of us. This is in a democracy when we get to ask the tough questions. Think of it like question period, but it's not politicians asking, it's us. And for that purpose, nothing can be more important in a democracy over decades, over hundreds, indeed over thousands of years, than a community space like this, where we bring people together, we invite candidates in, and we ask for the privilege, for the right to ask them tough questions. That's why we're here today. I'm honored to introduce our moderator, and because the organizers were foolish enough to give me the microphone, I'm going to slip in the first question and ask if the candidates can and representatives of the parties can answer it at some point in the next hour and a half, not right now. Simply this: whoever wins the next election, there will be other parties that are in opposition. And whoever they are, we need them to work together with us. We know you're running to be the next government, but only one party will be. If you aren't, are you prepared to work across the aisle with other opposition parties with us so that we can have a united front, whoever the government is, to ensure we achieve what people with disabilities deserve? With that question, I want to introduce our moderator for tonight, Mr. Isaac Callan. He is a global news TV reporter covering Queen's Park and lots of other things. He's covered disability issues before, and he's done so in a way that shows a deep journalistic commitment to the truth, to digging for the truth, and to exposing stories that others don't. That typifies the disability issues in this election. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Isaac Callan.
Good evening, and thank you, David. Very generous introduction. I'm really honored to be here serving as your moderator tonight. And I, like David and all the organizers, are really grateful to the Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital for hosting us tonight in this really beautiful space. In thanking them, I want to acknowledge that we're on the land that is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee-speaking nations, including the Huron-Wendat, Seneca, and Mohawk, as well as the Mississaugas of the Credit. All of us, including all partner organizations that have put on this event together, are grateful for the opportunity to bring this event to this space and are collectively committed to a path to truth and reconciliation. As organizers, we also want to acknowledge that all persons, regardless of their abilities or disabilities, contribute to the rich makeup of our world. I also just personally want to thank the groups that have organized this for the work they do both now during elections and when governments are sitting as well. As journalists at Queen's Park, it's groups like the AODA Alliance, like the Ontario Autism Coalition, who make our jobs as journalists easier, who remind us of the perspectives that are so important to the stories that we tell, and who help hold governments to account in a really irreplaceable way. So to have an event like this before an election with candidates where you can ask questions and we can get commitments on the record is a really important thing. So yeah, I'm grateful to our organizers, to our candidates, attendees tonight, and for you who are all here, both in person and on Zoom. Before we get to the meat of the debate, a couple of housekeeping points just to go over. First, there are light kosher snacks and drinks available at the back of the room. Those are for you, so please help yourselves. We also have attendant care available on site for those that need it. Please raise your hand to get the attention of one of our organizers, and they'll be able to come over and assist you. Accessible washrooms are just over there to my right, around the corner. We also know that disability can be an emotional topic. So we have the wonderful Robin, Katie, and Lindsay, who are social workers from Holland, Bloorview, and Rena. They're on site and available to speak to anyone at any point if you need. Robin, Katie, Lindsay, could you just stick your hands up or give us a wave so that everyone can see where you are? Wonderful, thank you so much. If at any point you want to speak to them, please just raise your hand and an organizer will help connect you. Now, the debate itself, a few more minutes to establish the ground rules for this event. These rules were set up by the consortium of disability organizers who have arranged tonight's event. First, all 4 of Ontario's major political parties were invited to send a candidate of their choice to this event. I'd like you to please welcome Ignacio Mongrel, the Green Party candidate for University of Rosedale. Marjorie Knight, who is the NDP candidate for Cambridge. And Catherine McGarry, Liberal Party president. I would note we did invite the PC party to send a representative tonight. They've not confirmed, but on the end we have a seat that's available for them. If they choose to take part at any point, they'll be more than welcome. I just want to kind of explain the format next. The debate will begin with an opening statement. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer one simple but central question. What will your party do, if elected, for Ontarians with disabilities? Following that, we're going to rotate through a series of 3 different question formats and repeat that throughout the debate. The first question will be pre-submitted. I'll read out a question that one of you submitted before the debate tonight. During registration, we asked if you had questions for the candidates, and you had questions for the candidates. We received more than 100 questions from those of you who registered online. The organizing team has reviewed all those submissions, and they've done their best to select a representative sample of the questions asked and that is representative of the disability community. I have these questions with me. They're organized by category. I'm going to do my best to get through as many as we can. We're not going to get to all 100, but if we don't get to yours, I hope somewhere else in the debate your topic is addressed. After that question, we'll move to a question from those of you in the room with us tonight. For that part, when we get there, please raise your hand or indicate that you would like to ask a question, and one of our volunteers will bring a microphone to you and give you a chance to pose your question to one or all of the candidates on the stage. Please keep your questions to a minute. We want to get through as many as possible. If after about 30 seconds it feels like you're still framing your question, I'll give you a nudge and try and just hurry you along to the point of asking. If, of course, you have a disability that requires a little longer, we'll absolutely accommodate that. We also have a wonderful American Sign Language interpretation team on site. For those of you that would like to ask questions via ASL, thank you to the ASL team. As well, thank you to our live captioning team who's on site tonight. We're really grateful to both those teams for their work making this debate one of the most accessible debates and really as accessible as possible. So please, a round of applause for both those teams. And then finally, we'll select a question from those of you watching online via Zoom. We'll read that question from the chat, but for those of you who would like to ask your question via ASL online, please indicate that in the chat. We'll have one of our on-site ASL translators view the question and interpret it out loud for the candidates. Now, I must stress the candidates, beyond that first question, have not seen these questions in advance. If a question identifies a specific candidate who you want to answer, I'll direct it to them. If it feels like one candidate is getting all the questions or too many questions, I may open that out to both their colleagues or to one of their colleagues. Equally, if you ask a general question, I'll try and direct it to all the candidates, but I may also zero in on one or two of them in that case. Generally speaking, we're going to be looking for an absolute maximum of 2 minutes for each answer candidates. I'm going to ask you really please work with me here on that. The more succinct our questions and the more succinct our answers are, the more we're going to get in during our time together. The organizers have also given me the discretion to slip in a few questions of my own. I'm going to be using that discretion to nudge the candidates along. If there's a point where it feels like you're maybe not quite answering the question, I'll push you back to what was asked and make sure that we get the most direct answers we can. When we get near the end, I'll call on each of you to answer in one short, sharp, engaging minute why people should vote for your party. So, without further delay, let's give our candidates one more round of applause before we get to work. Thank you. I'm going to begin in the order of introduction. Ignacio of the Green Party, you have 3 minutes to answer what your party will do, if elected, for people with disabilities.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this working? So I was wondering if I'm going to be the first one, and yeah, unfortunately I am. My name is Ignacio. I'm the candidate for University Rosedale. I'm brand new to politics. This is my first time campaigning for the Green Party and being involved in politics. But before I answer the question, I also wanted to thank everyone here for coming. It's not very nice outside, so thank you for being present here. And thank you for everyone that is online watching from home, from work, from wherever you are. Also, thank you for listening to us. Sorry. And thank you for the organizers. I've been in touch a lot with Gary, so I wanted to thank the whole team. I'm sure there's a big team behind this event, so thank you for that. So what would I do, or what would the Green Party do to support Ontarians with disabilities? The short answer is a lot. There's a lot that the party has pledged to do in support of Ontarians living with disabilities. We are one of the, I think is the only party that has actually costed out how much money will be invested in, for example, initiatives like ODSP and OW. So there's actually a plan on how these things are going to be financed. There's the Green Party as long as the Liberal Party. They have both also pledged to double the support that Ontarians receiving ODSP receive. And we have a plan to make sure we explain clearly how maybe the money is going to be coming from. It is estimated that between like $6 billion and $12 billion are needed in order to fund these pledges. And part of the plan from the Green Party that includes getting funds to fund that would be canceling like Ontario's Place Spa that is being built under the Ford government, and that will free about 1.5 billion. Another way of funding these initiative would be to cutting down on Highway 413 and the Bradford bypass that is estimated to cost Ontarians taxpayers $10 billion plus in money. But there's also like more long-term sustainable solutions that will allow the Green Party to fund this pledge. The Green Party often don't get elected to govern, so we never have the chance to actually govern, but we can promise Ontarians with disabilities that we will be pressing the government to implement the Accessible Ontario Pledge. I've been reading a lot about that. To be
Ignacio?
Yeah.
You're at your 3 minutes.
There you go. It's hard.
Thank you so much.
First debate. Thank you.
Marjorie, could I ask you to come next, please?
Thank you so much. Put that back a little. The NDP supported this pledge wholeheartedly in 2005, and we are disappointed, greatly disappointed, that in 20 years we have made no progress. We will absolutely prioritize AODA implementation as soon as possible, especially because a legislative deadline passed. We have gone line by line on the pledge, and we believe that this is something that has to happen. In my work, I work as a family outreach worker, and I work with families, often with children and the elderly, and I see what happens to these families when their needs are not met, whether it's in a school where I have children who are on the spectrum, who are brought to school, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, mom is called to come and bring the child back home. It disrupts the entire family, it disrupts the education, and mom cannot work because she has to be there. I see it when it comes to our housing crisis. When we talk about encampments and people talk about, people with mental health problems and people with addiction problems, and yes, they're in the encampments, but you know who else is in the encampments? People who are on ODSP and are disabled because they cannot afford housing and because they cannot afford or even get accessible housing. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart, and it needs to be dealt with. And this is one of the things that NDP is absolutely committed to doing. When we had COVID, we were told that it takes $2,000 a month in order for a family to be able to look after itself. And that, my friends, is what I call the poverty line. And therefore, when we talk about the rates for assistance, we need to make sure that it's there or as close to there as it can be. So when we say we will double the rates, we know what we have in mind. People need to be able to support themselves. They need to be able to buy food and pay rent. And we need to make sure that we make sure that there's deeply affordable housing. That when we build
Marjorie,
in mind for everyone.
And Catherine, finally, can we move to you, please? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody, including the sponsors, for putting this night on. I am deeply passionate about the subject, and in order to give you a bit of context of why, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I had a full career as a nurse. I did 10 years at Sick Kids. I've also been a home nurse, home and community care case manager, I've also nursed in emerge and intensive care. So I've done a little bit of everything in that sector. Personally, we raised a family of 6. Our oldest 2 have disabilities. Our oldest, although he's outgrown a lot of it, had severe lung health issues, which landed him in hospital for 4 years, not weeks, years. Our next son sadly passed away in 2021 at age 36 from severe epilepsy and complications through there. Before that, he was supported on ODSP, and I can tell you that my family understands what many families here in this room are facing. So that's really a lot about myself and why at the end of a lot of the trauma in our own family, I decided to run, and I decided to run for the Liberal parties. The Liberal Party actually passed these excellent legislation in 2005. It was nice to see David today. He was a frequent visitor when I became an MPP from 2014 to 18 in the Ontario legislature. And I followed that up with being a mayor and also a regional councillor for the city of Cambridge. So I understand from several different levels of government, as well as a nurse, as well as a family, how important this legislation is and how we need to continue to implement it. We went a long way during our term of office in the Liberal government, but not enough. We need to take some of the regulations that the AOD needs to target, make sure we have some targeted deadlines, some funding, and to ensure that we have these standards not only implemented, but enforced. Housing, we need more deeply affordable housing, accessible, as well as supportive housing. Our new regulations, why not have our building code upgraded so that new builds are already accessible? Wouldn't that be an incredible piece? Education, we need to ensure that our kids can learn in barrier-free spaces, not only from K to 12, but also in our post-secondary educations. We need the supports for 38,000 kids languishing on the wait list for assess. We need job supports. We need to ensure that the funding that the PCs, not here to announce why they cut 11 programs in the last year quietly, and a lot of those were employment supports for people with disabilities.
You've all made time, well done. We're just going to take 1 second while we sort something with the captioning, and in that time, I'm going to borrow a question from the televised debate, starting with you, Marjorie, and ask just what your first job was, and we'll just do that briefly, and we'll go from you, Marjorie, on to Ignace, and then on to Catherine.
What my first ever job was.
First ever job, the first time you were paid.
I worked in the environmental department of the National Environmental Company in Jamaica.
Ignace?
I worked there as an intern.
Nice. Ignace?
Yeah, so my first job, I'm originally from Uruguay, so I did an exchange with the US. So I did a program that was called Work and Travel. So I was 17 years old and I went to Wisconsin to work as housekeeping for a hotel for 3 months. So I learned a lot doing that job, and I mean, gave me a lot of skills, even like connecting with people, like having coworkers, being in a foreign country, learning a new language. I learned a lot through that experience, and it was very valuable for me.
Catherine?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Your first ever job, the first time you were paid for any job in your life.
Thank you. After being a volunteer at Mount Sinai Hospital, I actually went into housekeeping and then retail in order to support my nursing education. Learned a lot about dealing with the people face to face, and that stood me in good stead as I became a nurse.
Wonderful, thank you. So we're going to return now to the topic at hand. Appreciate the candid question there. This is one of the pre-written questions, so someone submitted this at the start of the process. Ontario's accessible housing crisis has led to decades-long wait lists. What immediate steps will your party take to ensure people with disabilities can secure affordable, supportive housing? Catherine, we'll start with you, and absolute maximum of 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. And the Liberals have an excellent housing plan. Not only do we need all kinds of housing built, whether it's purpose-built rental, or single-family houses, but we certainly need a lot more accessible houses. Our government has a housing plan that has been praised across the country in order to try and get shovels in the ground. We're looking at new tools for developers, incentivizing them to ensure that we have more affordable units. But beyond affordable units, either within each build that's going on, are the supports that happens. It's not enough to provide housing. You need supportive housing, so the supports paid for by this government. We'll be looking to ensure that we are working alongside our partnerships with the federal government. The current PC government, and they're not here to answer this, has not stepped up in order to provide a dollar for dollar funding match for our federal government. And they have had to deal with municipalities without the provincial government coming alongside. So we would continue to work with municipalities. We have a good program in Waterloo Region where we're taking city and region-owned land and then helping to support some of our housing partners such as Indwell and Habitat for Humanity, as well as our Indigenous community who have just put 34 accessible units for women and children in downtown Cambridge. And that takes commitment. It takes the ability to work with others in order to put shovels in the ground. And we have amassed a great number of really good, not only partnerships with our local developers, but also homeowners to ensure that they can assist in building units within their house that can certainly house these folks. Thank you.
Perfect. 5 seconds back. Thank you. Marjorie, would you like to go next on ensuring people with disabilities can secure affordable and supportive housing?
Yes, one of the things that we're going to do, as Catherine pointed out, with the affordable housing and working with nonprofits, the churches have been showing us the way. They have been donating their land and making partnerships with companies like Indwell, who actually specializes in doing supportive housing and things like that. So we are looking to utilize lands owned by the city and the region and building on them. We're also uploading from the municipalities the cost of doing this building. Municipalities cannot afford to build, and that is why we're where we are now. So we will take back that, and we will ensure that we are partnering with more than just the usual developers, but people who are specializing in supportive and affordable housing using our own lands, which will bring down the price immensely. In this way, we expect to build about 60,000 new supportive housing units province-wide, and that would be just the beginning.
Wonderful, thank you. Ignacio, the same for you.
Yeah, affordable housing, it's a key issue for a lot of Ontarians. And I've been talking to many municipalities and people that are deeply involved in this matter. And I find that a lot of the developers are in a way bullying different municipalities into like reducing the amount of affordable housing that they're building when they're doing like a larger project. And that's something that for me is unacceptable. So the Green Party actually has a very solid plan to tackle this issue in affordable housing, starting with supporting people with disabilities to be able to get more support that they need for shelter, for living in a place that accommodates their needs. And the Ontario laws and things that are related to building codes are very outdated, and they need to be updated to have in mind spaces that can accommodate people that have needs that are not usually accommodated or taken in consideration when these codes were built. So yeah, there's a lot of changes in there that also needs to be at a legislative level, but yeah, we can assure you that the Green Party has a good plan for making affordable housing a reality for Ontarians that are looking for a home and in need of a home.
Thank you. And now we're going to move to a question in the room. So if you're here and you have a question you would like to ask, please indicate in some way that you would like to ask that, and we can get a microphone to you just over there on that side, right on my right, the left of the podium, very over by the water there.
Yes. It's been that the ODSP program has been stagnant for a number of years, and that the Harris government had cut the program severely back in 1997. How will raising the rates and doubling it help the people in the city of Toronto and the rest of Ontario, given that the rate of inflation is far outpacing the amount that people on ODSP receive, as well as the rents that ODSP puts a cap on a maximum around $700, while the rent is around $2,300 to $2,800 a month.
Okay.
And what will the next government do to fix that?
Thank you. So the question is, how will doubling ODSP, which all of your parties have committed to doing, help with the cost of living in Toronto, which has escalated so quickly, the cost of rent, and what is your plan for that? Starting with Marjorie, please.
I think you would understand that it has to be more than just doubling
Yes.
the assistance rates. Other things also have to be done in tandem with that. One of the things that we have to do is that we have to have proper rent control. We have to deal with rent evictions. We have to deal with the raising of rents in between. We have all these loopholes that allow people to charge obscene amounts of money for people's rent. That all has to be dealt with. We have to also look at what kinds of supports are we able to give people. In the region of Waterloo, we have a group called PESH, which is the Plan to End Chronic Homelessness. And one of the things that we realize is that people just plain can't afford rent. So we have put forward a lot of rent supplements that will help people get into the apartments that they need to get. They're transferable, they move with them until such time that they can find something that they can properly afford. But it's also important to know that we have to build. We cannot get away from that. The way to have deeply affordable rent is for us to build it and for us to buy existing apartments, and then we be the ones, or the municipality, or a consortium who rents them at a deeply affordable rate so that people can afford to live. So it's really quite a few things in one. It can't just be doubling the rates. It has to be other things in there also.
Thank you. Ignacio, you next, please.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Me and the Green Party, we believe that under ODSP, people with disabilities are basically forced to live under poverty by its legislation. So doubling ODSP will be a first step. But similarly to what Marjorie was saying, other things also need to happen at the same time. And some of the things that the Green Party is fighting and will be fighting towards will be removing the aggressive, in a way, clawbacks or barriers that penalize the people that are receiving ODSP from trying to improve their financial situation and trying to improve their lives. And many of those clawbacks are, for example, the asset limits that are imposed to the folks receiving the support, that after 40 or 50K of having that amount of assets, that will reduce the amount that they receive as part of the benefit, but also the employment income, where it's right now capped at $1,000 extra. I guess that a person with disabilities that has a job can earn with that job without having any cut to their benefit. that needs to be removed ASAP, and that's something that doesn't really work towards supporting the person, but it works towards diminishing the person. So things like that, the Green Party of Ontario is deeply committed to get rid of and find better ways to help elevate and help people that are living with disabilities and receiving the ODSP benefits to live with dignity.
Thank you. And Catherine, the same question for you, please.
Thank you. I think that in order to look at somebody that is needing an ODSP support, you really need to look at the whole picture. You need to look at the needs of the individual, the family, as well as the overall public. I am part of a Liberal government that in its day started the poverty reduction strategy. And that was a methodology that we used at that time. We did the research and looked at all the different supports that could help an individual to thrive and their families to do the same. And I'm proud of that history. So not only doubling ODSP rates, but we'd look at more rent control, more rent supports, increasing accessible and affordable units, increase the supports for supportive housing so one can live more independently, and funding, stable funding of community supports. Anybody in for that? I certainly am. As a care coordinator, I used to see people scraping by and having to donate to the cause for community living or for some of the meal support programs that we had. So stable funding for those organizations is helpful. Education programs to ensure that people can be their very best, to be able to use those job skills with employers that have been incentivized in order to hire people with disabilities because they find that they're excellent employees, and I'm proud of that. Properly funding health supports as well as mental health supports. This is key to make sure everybody is productive, whether they're on ODSP or programs or not. We'll be looking at taking GST off home heating bills, increasing barrier-free transportation, which we're certainly committed to, and hiring a chief accessibility officer that can oversee these programs throughout all of government.
Thank you. We're now going to take a question from Zoom, and in the interests of getting in as many questions as we can, I'm going to start limiting you candidates to 1 minute per answer. So let's keep it tight. Henry, on Zoom, please.
Thank you. On behalf of the over 450 people listening on Zoom, I am a polio survivor. Why are seniors with a disability not 100% covered for the devices and services they require so they can maintain their dignity and quality of life? Disabilities do not retire, they get worse.
Yeah.
Catherine, we're going to start with you on 1 minute.
Thank you. Certainly, seniors sometimes struggle to be able to stay in their own homes. We've had a program in the past that the PCs shut that would assist in not only health individual mobility devices, but also doing some of the changes in their home to be able to maintain themselves in their own homes, ensuring that they have the supports they need in an allied health professional way, whether it's OT, physio, or whatever. But in order to protect where they're at right now, we need to ensure that seniors are not facing rent evictions, which is one of the main reasons that we're seeing a number of seniors in shelters. So a Liberal government would be looking at ensuring that our seniors can age with dignity and to ensure that they've got the space that they need, barrier-free, and more supports for mobility devices to keep them independent.
Thank you. Ignacio?
Can you repeat the question to make sure that I answered correctly?
Sorry about that. The gist of it was the individual had polio. Not all devices are covered as they're aging. It even gets worse. Disabilities don't retire, they continue on. How will you ensure everybody has the supports that they need?
I mean, I truly believe that everyone should be having the supports that they need to live a dignified life. And To be honest, I'm not too familiar about this subject, but I would like to deeply learn more to be able to give you a better detailed question. But I mean, my short answer would be that I don't know why, but I would like to offer some solutions to change that.
Thank you. And Marjorie?
There's absolutely no doubt that the government that we have now has sharply cut funding for assistive devices. This needs to be fully funded once again, and we also need to be able to put supports around the people who actually provide these assistive devices, because one of the things for the coming tariffs is that this will affect assistive device production and giving them out to people. So we are going to be putting supports around them and ensuring that those who need these devices get them and are fully funded for them. The rent evictions and demevictions and the rises in property taxes, which is what is driving so many of our seniors who are on fixed incomes out of their homes. Those issues also need to be dealt with.
Thank you. And then returning, we've done our first lap of the question format, returning to one of the pre-written questions that was submitted before the debate. The person asking this question writes, accessing healthcare at home is nearly impossible for many Ontarians with disabilities. Will your party, if elected, fund home visits by doctors and nurses to ensure proper care? Ignacio, could I start with you? And 1 minute we're sticking with still. Thank you.
My short answer will be absolutely yes. I mean, I come from a country where home visits are the norm for people that are facing disabilities or people that are senior or elderly. And I mean, I've seen firsthand the benefits of having this kind of care at home for people that need that the most. So yeah, there will be a lot of like research to be conducted into like what would be the best way of implementing these kind of things and how the funding could be made available. But I'm very much in favor, and I think this is something that should be implemented.
Thank you. Catherine?
Thank you. And in a word, the Liberal government says yes to this. As a matter of fact, nurses and doctors already visit palliative care patients in their homes. Nurse-led practitioner clinics have nurse practitioners that go out to the house. I know I was standing on a porch with a nurse practitioner one night when I finally got access to a patient with huge anxiety at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. But this is in a very important part to properly invest in home and community care. We've seen the recent crisis, unfortunately, under this government, who has not supplied the home care case manager or the nurses or the PSWs with the equipment and the care that they need at home and the supplies. We wouldn't let that happen in the Liberal government. We have a history of huge investments in home and community care, as well as programs that help to keep people in their right, to age in place in their homes. So in a word, absolutely, we would continue these investments.
And Marjorie?
Our entire health system is in crisis. We do not have the people in place that we need to help. We don't have the nurses, we don't have the doctors, we don't have the family doctors to follow people's care. This is where we have to begin. We have to recruit more doctors. We have to open up spaces in our medical schools. We have to find ways to paths to accreditation for those who are here from foreign countries with lots of experience and degrees. We need to find ways to use them. Once we have the people, we can more than certainly enlarge the way we do our home care.
Thank you all. And if there's another question in the room, if you could indicate at the back left with the blue hat, please.
Hi, sorry, can you just come a little short? I'll just set it.
First off, it's really good to see that Doug Ford does not care about people with disabilities. That's pretty evident. My question, you only have a minute to respond. I would just like to know which party, if elected, would support nonprofit supportive housing rather than giving billions of dollars to for-profit long-term care homes? Right now, there is a 12-year waiting list for a one-bedroom apartment for a person with disability. So it's not right that someone who's 30 years old must live in a hospital, which costs $1,500 a day, or a long-term care home, which costs $500 a day. Independent supportive living costs $200 a day.
Thank you. Candidates, which of you would support the non-profit developers over other organizations, starting with Marjorie, please?
That is actually our plan in the region of Waterloo. That is what we're working on. We are working with nonprofits, and we are making low interest rate on loans and grants to allow them to build. So at this point, it's not even a matter of saying, okay, you have to come up with all this money as a nonprofit to make a building and to do supportive housing. We are working with them to ensure they have the finance to do this because they do it better than anyone else. They are not, it's not for profit, it's for people. And we firmly believe that this is the way to move forward when we're building, especially for supportive and deeply affordable housing.
Thank you.
We don't need any more fancy luxury places. We need places where people can live.
Ignacio?
So I work with a lot of social entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have had a lot of great ideas to tackle like this issue with housing on like non-for-profit long-term care facilities. And I mean, I can respond to your question by saying that yes, this is something that I would support, and I have a lot of experience to working with grant programs and being able to create programs that are designed to support different groups that are underserved or underrepresented, to make sure that the funds actually go to the community and go to the people who need it the most, versus going for for-profit corporations that are like maybe sometimes taking advantage of the people that are part of their let's say the clients. So I will be also deeply involved in making sure that these grants are also structured in a way that the beneficiaries actually get the benefits that they're being promised for.
Thank you. And Catherine?
Thank you for the question. It's an excellent one. I think it looks to all levels of government in order to provide the type of housing that we need with nonprofit. From the municipalities that can spare land in order to prevent or save on the cost of the land, to working with our municipal and federal counterparts. The Liberal government is certainly committed in order to do whatever it takes to get deeply affordable housing there. And not only that, we look at rent control, portable rent subsidies that go with the home, you know, the person, not with the home, and continue to work together to ensure that when the federal government comes with a particular way of building not-for-profit homes, that we are ready to deliver that money from the provincial level, something that this Ford government has not been doing. So again, I think we are all committed to this crisis, and we need to continue to work together to do that, but a Liberal government will certainly support ensuring that we can get the job done.
Thank you, Catherine. And now we'll take another question from Zoom via Gary, please.
Well, some people will think that I planted this question, but it's come up time and time again in the Q&A. There is currently a 40-year waiting list for housing with supports for those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. What will each of your parties do to alleviate that? And at the same time, another very popular question is, what can you do to get more community support day programs out there in the community for those individuals? And a number of the sponsoring organizations are very interested to hear this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, can we start with you, and can we really focus the answer not just on the housing crisis in general, but the specifics of that question, please?
Can I hear it again? I'm so sorry. It's two-part, and I've got one in my head, but
Of course,
Could you
Gary, would you
repeat
mind
that? Sorry.
summarizing quickly?
Not a problem. There is currently a 40-year waiting list for housing with supports for those with developmental disabilities. And according to the chats, there's a shortage of community support day programs for those same individuals. What will you and your government do should you form power in order to alleviate the shortage of day programs, shortage of housing?
Thank you, Catherine.
thank you. Now I've got it. Certainly, in the work that I've done over the years, the day programs and supports, especially for young adults, are missing after they leave school at age 21. I've been very involved in ensuring that when I was elected that we were looking at that and starting to increase programming. Passport funding, for instance, was way increased under our term of government. But it is a need not only for young adults, but throughout the experience. We are working provincially along with our municipal partners to get this done. And this is what I mean by stable funding. You've got to support your stable funding for all of our community supports in order to meet the needs of all of our folks, not just housing, but ensuring that they have a good, wonderful place to be every day. That socialization is often what they miss, and the families need respite.
Catherine, thank you. Ignacio next.
So building up on community support programs is something that the Green Party of Ontario is also committed to doing. In the Green Party of Ontario plan, there is money that is dedicated to supporting all these programs and creating new ones, and making sure that the community building part is also there, supporting different community centers that are in different neighborhoods, and also creating more to also support the different needs of each neighborhood. It's part of the plan as well. When it comes to the 4-year wait list for housing, there's a lot of great ideas and some of them have been mentioned here by the person with the blue hat. But things like supporting non-profit organizations that can create housing, and that's something that we would probably be very interested in pursuing. But
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry to cut
Running
you
out of
off.
time.
Marjorie.
I think it's a shame that this present government that we have has cut so much community funding. It has become the Hunger Games amongst nonprofits and community groups, where everybody's fighting over the same funding, which gets increasingly smaller and smaller. Dedicated funding needs to be done. Adequate, stable funding needs to be done. It needs to be intentionally done. And that has been lacking, and that is something that we are definitely aiming to do. Housing, it is the same problem straight across the board. People are waiting 40 years, 10 years, 20 years, 15 years. We have to build. We have to build. We have to get back into the business of building homes, federal and provincial, and we need to not download it to the municipal people because it's not fair.
Thank you. We're returning to the pre-written questions. We have one that was pre-written here before the debate by one of you that says, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, deadline for 2025 is here, yet Ontario remains largely inaccessible. The question says, will your party enforce stricter penalties for non-compliance? Now here, rather than giving you a time limit, I'm just going to ask you to go along either a yes, a no, or an I don't know. And then if it's yes, just one example of what a stricter penalty would be. I want to really focus the question here on that individual deadline. Starting with Catherine, a yes, no, maybe, and an example.
Absolutely, yes. And those penalties would have to suit the issue, whether it's a developer or an individual. But the accessibility, the way it is, the legislation's great, but we do have to move on it.
Ignacio?
My answer is yes, and the penalty I think would be at a government level as well, because there's been a lot of promises that hasn't been accomplished or fulfilled, that wanted there was a promise to make Ontario accessible by 2025, and we are already in 2025. So there's accountability for the government as well.
Perfect. And Marjorie?
Absolutely, yes. And I think before we can even talk about the penalties, we need to put back in place the investigators and those who are going to be going to inspect. How do we put forward punishment when we don't even know what's there? And we need to fix that first, and then we can definitely move on to how we are going to punish you, because we will.
Thank you. And then I'm going to slip in David's question here before we come to one in the room, because I think it's a very interesting question. Only one party can form government. In just 1 minute, starting with Catherine, we'll go in the same order. Can you explain what you'll do if you're in opposition to hold the government to account and to propose positive solutions for the disability community?
Thank you. In opposition, you have that ability not only to bring forward private members' bills, but also on opposition day motions. And this is an issue that affects people all over Ontario. This is an excellent time in opposition to be able to hold the government to account and to continue to propose new legislation, whether it is moving forward on the autism file, whether it is ensuring that they put back some of the funding and the supports for employers with incentives to ensure that all people are able to take advantage of that, and also to ensure that people understand the cuts to education and the huge wait list for some of those waiting for educational assessments. So the opposition can really help to focus on this in a broader view.
Thank you. Ignacio?
Yeah, so as the opposition, the Green Party, and myself, mostly myself, I believe in research-oriented results. So there's been a lot of things that have been approved or put forward that has no intention, and things that have been done just for gain votes and so on. But I mean, what the Green Party will do as the opposition is put in an incredible amount of pressure to press the government to be able to implement the things that were promised for the Accessible Ontario Pledge, and try to hold accountable everyone in the government that has not being up to their standards in what they have promised.
Thank you, Marjorie.
We are very experienced in that. We work very hard in opposition. Remember in 2019, our critic Joel Harden put forward a motion that we should put timelines and expectations on this very file of how it should be achieved by 2025. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't get as far as we'd like to get with that, but in opposition, we are absolutely committed to pushing for those things that need to be done and to bring it up repeatedly until hopefully it is dealt with.
Perfect, wonderful. Thank you, candidates. Another question in the room. In the purple over there, please.
Yes, that's brilliant. Can you describe any plans your party may have to have some form of system where people with disabilities or any kind of health-related basic living needs could provide feedback to tell you before a crisis erupts into a tens or hundreds of $1,000s financial thing, that
Disability face, but it's also a place to get information on where you can maybe borrow equipment. We used to have a Red Cross borrowing cupboard in the city of Cambridge and Waterloo. So I think that it really comes to communication and ensuring that you've got good ability to be in touch with your worker, whoever that might be, in order to help to protect people.
Thank you. Ignacio?
Yeah, I think a great way of preventing those things from happening would be like education, having a solid plan to be able to educate folks, not to maybe be a victim potentially from these programs, but also educate them to be able to be making like strong, sound decisions and have critical thinking skills. So I think education is a powerful tool that should be available to everyone and anyone. And also things that, I mean, going back to accountability and finding ways of like potentially more severe punishment to those that are sometimes taking advantage of people that are in a more vulnerable position should be kind of look into and implemented. But I agree with Catherine, communication is key to be able to have that communication flowing at all levels in one organization, but also communicating with the people receiving the services to make sure there's no misunderstandings.
And Marjorie? Sure.
I think that is very important for things like this, is the community. In our communities, in my job, I often come across cases like this, and we do a case conferences where we're working with the person, with their workers, with us as outreach workers, with the government officials, to do a wraparound care so that when things start to happen, we are involved from the beginning, and the people feel comfortable to come to us to say, listen, this is what I need. Can you help me research it? Can you help me look for what? And then I can say, yeah, but you know, if we talk to this person or we talk to that person, we can, and in that way, we can get things done in a reasonable time and avoid some of that. But it just speaks to the importance of funding in your community, because this is the best place to do that.
Thank you. And we have time for another question from Zoom, Garrett.
Thank you very much. In September 2022, Ontario's Progressive Conservative government increased ODSP rates to align with inflation with the 5% hike that was then indexed to inflation. Disabled Ontarians disproportionately live in legislated poverty. 3 parties present have all pledged to double ODSP rates. If, as an ODSP recipient, please explain why I should trust your party over the other 2 to deliver on this promise if elected.
Okay, starting with Marjorie, you effectively have the same promise on ODSP. Why are you the most competent party to deliver it?
You know, I say to people, trust comes very slowly. It comes very slowly to me. I work in the community. I've always been in the community, and I am very open with what I feel or how things are or should be. That is who I am. I am in a party that has that same values. That's the reason why I'm in that party, because they have the same values that I have. So you can trust me or not. It will be up to you. I can't make you. But I can say to you that when I tell you that this is who I am, and these are my values, and this is what I believe, you can understand that. Whether you believe me or not, I'm leaving that up to you. But this is who I am. These are my values and the values of my party. You get to decide.
Thank you. Ignacio?
I mean, I had the same exact dilemma, and when I was looking into getting more information about the people that I was voting to, or the ones that were planning on governing us, I joined the Liberal Party, I joined the NDP, I joined the Greens, and the ones that are more constant in their message, the ones that I see have less broken promises, the ones that have been more consistent with what they say, what they stand for, and also support their candidates, having the Green Party. And that's why I decided also to get a deeper involvement with the Green Party, because I was tired of hearing a lot of promises about all kinds of things from all the other parties, but then those promises been broken. And I think the Green Party, as I mentioned, has been the one that is the most consistent. And even though it's a smaller part of the population that votes for the Green Party, I think that should definitely grow and give the Greens a chance to have more representation.
Thank you. And Catherine, why should people trust the Liberal Party over the Greens or the NDP on the ODSP promise?
The Liberals have history. If you recall back in the Harris-Eves government and the sudden cut in ODSP and OW rates of 22 or 26%, it was devastating. I was home nursing at that time and saw the result of the cuts in that income that people had. When the Liberals came in, we had to fix things. Not only did we upload billions of dollars of social services, the Ontario Drug Benefit Card, we also immediately started to increase the ODSP OW rates. We invested in hospitals and anywhere from 13 to 15% annually to get back some of the cuts that they had made. So Liberals already have the history to do that. They've already done it. We are committed in order to ensure that each and every person has what they need to thrive and survive, not only survive, but also thrive. Doubling ODSP rates, ensuring it's tied to inflation, and ensuring that the supports that people need are there to be protected.
Thank you. We are running close to time. We have what is a big question. I think the Ontario Autism Programme has long wait lists, leaving families struggling. What concrete steps will your party take to ensure timely access to autism services? And because we're running up against the clock here, I really want to discourage you from discussing what has happened to the autism program in the past, other governments' policies on it. This question is what your party will do if elected. And we'll start with Marjorie again, please. I'm capping you at 45 seconds this time.
We have worked very closely with the associations that are advocating for families who have children living with autism. And I think that we have all seen and agreed on steps that needed to be taken. I think it's a matter of taking the darn steps and doing what we know is right. With the testing of children, making sure they get tested early, making sure they get the supports that they need, that they get into programming that will help them move forward in a way that their parents would like to see them move forward.
Thank you. And Catherine, next, please. 45 seconds max.
Thank you. The Liberals are committed to ensuring that not only do we have timely access to assessments for those families with autistic children, but also to ensure that the places in our education system are there for our workers, and the people that are there to assess them have enough education workers in order to deal with the number of families on the wait list. We are committed to ensuring that the autism file finally is fully funded, that has their families as well as the people that can help them to be funded to ensure that our wait lists go down from what the high is that they are right now.
Thank you. And Ignacio?
Yeah, I think all of this comes down to funding and being able to recruit professionals, doctors, and therapists that are going to be able to conduct this assessment. And I mean, the Green Party of Ontario has a solid plan to being able to recruit these professionals, so times can be shortened for families and folks that are waiting for autism assessments.
Thank you. We are nearly at the end of our debate. When I agreed to do this, David said it would come quickly to this point, and it really has. So I know there's a lot of questions we haven't had a chance to get to, and I'm sorry about that, but there's still a week left of the campaign for you to ask the parties, to ask your local MPPs, or your local candidates, I should say, those questions. So please do that. I would like to thank the organizers up on the screen back here for organizing this fantastic debate, the candidates and the attendees in this room. Thank you, everybody, so much. And we'll now conclude, having practiced 1 minute for most of the debate, with a very tight 1 minute from each candidate on the following prompt. Why should we vote for your party this election? I'm going to go in the reverse order to how we did the opening statements, which means, Catherine, we'll begin with you. 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Our leader, Bonnie Crombie, has promised to get the basics right. The issues that we face here, and all of you face, we face in our day-to-day life, is a government right now who is prioritizing things that we don't need in everyday life. So Bonnie Crombie has promised the basics: good health care, everybody with a family doctor, and access to primary care within 4 years, ensuring that the education system is properly funded, that we have enough assessments, that we have good staff, we're able to ensure that our kids are having a good education from K to 8, properly funding our post-secondary education.
Marjorie, next 1 minute, please. Why we should vote for your party in this election?
For the past 20 years, we have seen liberal governments, conservative governments, liberal governments, conservative governments, and we're where we are today. I think it's time that there is a change. I think it's a new day for some, and I think that it keeps reminding me of that phrase that says, what is the definition of insanity? Just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think it's time to get a different result, and I think the NDP will be the one to bring that change.
Thank you. Ignacio, to close us out.
Yeah, I think the Green Party of Ontario is the party that has shown that believes that in economic fairness, that no one should be left behind, especially the groups that are more susceptible, more vulnerable, and have been underrepresented in the past. As I mentioned before, I'm tired of listening to the same stories, listening to the same promises, and then being disappointed, having those promises broken. And that's why I joined the Green Party, and that's why I'm here taking action. And even though I'm not the most well-versed in the topic, I came here because I care about what people with disabilities are facing, and I want to show my support, and I want to show that they have the support of the Green Party that will not disappoint them.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for coming, both here and on Zoom. I'll turn it over now to Gary Gladstone, who's the lead stakeholder relations from RENA, one of our organizers, for the final word. Thank you.
Well, a big round of applause for our three incredible participants for coming. I have to tell you, when we did our very first debate a number of years ago here, I was sitting in one of those seats. I much prefer sitting back here going through the Zooms. Bottom line, and the most important thing for everybody here in person, listening on Zoom, your families, your friends, your extended village, Thursday, February the 27th, go and vote. Place your X beside the party that you think will help you the most, period. If you're not sure where to vote, go to elections.on.ca, which is Elections Ontario, and they will help. I want to take this opportunity and thank the 11 incredible organizations that you see behind you, who we all came together rather quickly. Funny story, it'll just take half a second. RENA, Community Living Toronto, and Holland Bloorview were in the process of organizing a debate. when I got a phone call from David Lepofsky from the AODA, who was also organizing a debate. And if I tell you it took less than a second for both of us to say, well, that's kind of stupid, let's all get together and make a bigger one. We called the meeting of all the organizations. Everybody seamlessly worked together. No one could have done more if they tried. It was an absolute pleasure working with all of them to bring all of you here together and on Zoom. And with apologies for the technical difficulties, it'll be on the AODA website for streaming tomorrow. And thank you, thank you. But most importantly, a massive thank you to Stuart Wong and the incredible team from Holland Kids Rehab Hospital, Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab Hospital, who have done phenomenal work to put all of this together. Stuart, your team is incredible, and thank you. And Isaac, thank you very much. You were an incredible moderator. Appreciate your time. Everybody, thank you for coming here. Thank you on Zoom. Next Thursday, February 27th, Election Day, vote. Thank you very much.
You can actually vote every day until the 25th. It's just like 4 of us. Right. Guys,
If it's inconvenient to go on the 27th, you can vote every day at the elections office from now until the 27th. And the advance polls are the 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Thank you.
That's down here.